I chose to travel on the Aranui to the islands it visits because I wanted to spend a little time in a culture that is neither American, European, nor Asian. The culture of the sea places, of Oceania. What I hope is to escape for a bit from the culture of overachievers, and the Tahitians I am first among do not disappoint. They aren't lazy, but neither are they harried. They seem happy, competent, friendly, talkative. I feel a little indignant on their behalf that their beautiful sea-circled world is known to citizens of the rest of the planet because of the European overachievers who happen to stop off here. Captain Cook, Melville, Maugham, Michener, Gauguin. In fairness to the latter, it must be said that even a few days in Tahiti will raise one's appreciation of his art. He captured, as no one else has, the gravity beneath the gaiety of Tahitian women. He saw the shadow of melancholy that lurks even in the flower-strewn glades of paradise. Though perhaps it isn't melancholy as such. Perhaps it's merely a sense that paradise too can be wearying in its own peculiar way. When the great tropical clouds scud through, the sea turns briefly gray with shadow. For most of the day, though, it is a deep blue. A mile out from my bungalow, the waves break forever against the reef, throwing up perfect sequences of brilliant whitecaps against an equally perfect sky. A few miles across the strait, the mountains of Mu'urea loom as a backdrop, keeping the eye from being lost in the blue of the sea. In the shallows, the water is green. Beneath my little porch, I can watch a multitude of fish noodling around in the coral. Mostly they're small fish, gray or black or almost transparent. But this morning a pair of exotics showed up, brilliant yellow with a black band around the yellow. Amid the drab regulars, the yellow and black fish seem like sports stars, fish one might see in a Nike commercial. If my mother, Hazel McMurtry, now 90 and dying, had seen a picture story on Tahiti in Red Book or McCall's or the Ladies' Home Journal, all magazines she subscribed to in the 40s and 50s, she might have remarked on how pretty the flowers looked. Perhaps, for 5 minutes, she might have fantasized coming here. But Mother's travel fantasies had too little steam to have taken her this far. At one point, when after more than 40 years together she and my father separated, she worked up a few fantasies involving Hawaii. But her deep fear of all forms of travel except the motor car soon defeated Hawaii. Ironically, Hawaii is the one place my father might actually have taken her, not because he was enticed by palm trees and white beaches, but because he would see the great ranch on the Big Island. The thought of a cattle paradise in the tropics sometimes tugged at his imagination, but not strongly enough to drag him to an airport. In fact, if you don't count Oklahoma, only 30 miles away, my parents took only 3 out-of-state trips in their 43 years together. One to the Grand Canyon in the 40s, one to South Dakota in the 50s, and one made at my insistence to Washington, D.C. on the occasion of their 42nd wedding anniversary. I went from D.C. to Texas in order to make this trip with them. It was the only way to be sure they actually came. It was my mother's first flight, my father's second. One of his brothers had taken him up in a biplane in 1928. The night before the trip, my parents had a tremendous fight. It was, I believe, over some pajamas that either had or had not been packed. Hostilities engendered by the fight over the pajamas permeated what proved to be a long day in the capital. My father found much to interest him in the unfamiliar grasses of Virginia, where I was living, but neither of them had the slightest interest in Washington itself. My mother was horrified by the absence of yards in Georgetown. My father was annoyed by the size of the Department of Agriculture, a worthless bureau in his opinion, which over the years had wasted whatever portion of his taxes had been allotted to it. My editor, Michael Corder, happened to be in town that day. We lunched with him at the restaurant on top of the Kennedy Center. My mother thought it was a big mistake to put a restaurant so high up,